introduction that establishes immediate intrigue with the lost continent. Hello everyone, and welcome to Sigil Sanctum. If you're ready to unlock ancient mysteries that can transform your spiritual journey, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Right now, today, we're diving deep into Lemuria, the ancient, mystical, and spiritually significant lost continent that holds the keys to humanity's spiritual evolution. Although this legendary civilization has gained recent popularity thanks to modern spiritual communities and New Age literature, Lemuria's story is much older and more complex than most realize. Let me know in the comments where you're watching. I love connecting with our global spiritual community, known as the motherland of humanity and the first spiritual civilization. Lemuria is believed to be the birthplace of advanced consciousness and metaphysical knowledge that predates all known history. This lost continent is said to have housed the most spiritually evolved beings ever to walk the earth, beings whose consciousness was so advanced they could manipulate reality itself through pure intention. What makes Lemuria so spiritually significant? What were the true capabilities of the Lemurians and their interdimensional technologies? And what does the destruction of this paradise represent for humanity's spiritual journey? Join us as we uncover all the mysteries and secrets of the lost spiritual empire of Lemuria. Establish legitimacy through scientific theory and historical context to understand Lemuria's true significance. We must first examine how this lost continent entered modern consciousness. The concept of Lemuria was born from a fascinating intersection of 19th century scientific inquiry and ancient spiritual wisdom that had been preserved in secret for millennia. In 1864, British zoologist Philip Sclater proposed the existence of a lost landmass in the Indian Ocean after discovering an intriguing mystery. Lemur fossils were found in Madagascar and India, but nowhere in Africa or the Middle East. This distribution pattern suggested that a vast continent once connected these regions, which Sclater named Lemuria after the lemur species that provided the crucial evidence. However, what mainstream science dismissed as geological speculation, ancient spiritual traditions had been teaching for thousands of years. The Tamil texts of southern India, some dating back over 2,000 years, speak of Kumari Kandam, a magnificent continent that existed in the Indian Ocean, home to an advanced civilization that possessed knowledge far beyond what we understand today. These texts describe not just a physical landmass, but a spiritual realm where divine beings walked among humans and taught the highest mysteries of consciousness. Aboriginal Australian Dreamtime stories, passed down through oral tradition for over 40,000 years, tell of the Great Southern Land, a paradise where the first people lived in perfect harmony with nature and possessed the ability to communicate directly with the spirit world. These stories describe beings who could travel between dimensions, heal with their thoughts, and access universal knowledge through meditation. Even the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, while primarily known for his accounts of Atlantis, made references to an even older civilization that predated the Atlantean Empire, a land of spiritual masters who had achieved perfect unity with the divine cosmos. Deep dive into esoteric sources and channeled information. The most comprehensive information about Lemuria comes from the Theosophical Society, founded in 1875 by Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, a Russian mystic who claimed to have received direct teachings from ascended masters. In her monumental work, The Secret Doctrine, Blavatsky presented detailed accounts of Lemuria that she claimed were transmitted to her telepathically by the Mahatmas, enlightened beings who had witnessed the rise and fall of this ancient civilization. According to Blavatsky's revelations, Lemuria was the homeland of the third root race of humanity, a species far more spiritually advanced than modern humans. These beings lived during what we now call the Mesozoic era, approximately 150 million years ago, when the Earth's vibrational frequency was much higher and the barriers between physical and spiritual dimensions were thin. The Lemurian civilization spanned an enormous continent that stretched across much of what is now the Pacific and Indian Oceans. This landmass was roughly the size of modern-day Asia and Africa combined, with its capital city located in what is now the Pacific Ocean, west of present-day Peru. The continent was divided into 7 major regions, each ruled by a council of elders who had achieved various levels of spiritual mastery. Rudolf Steiner, the Austrian philosopher and founder of anthroposophy, provided additional insights through his clairvoyant research, Steiner described the Lemurians as beings who existed in a state of consciousness that we can barely imagine today. They had no concept of individual ego as we understand it, instead existing in a collective consciousness that was simultaneously individual and universal. Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, gave hundreds of readings about Lemuria during his trance states. Cayce described the continent as a place where technology and spirituality were perfectly integrated, where crystal-based devices could amplify human consciousness and facilitate communication across vast distances. He spoke of temples that served as both spiritual centers and technological hubs, where the Lemurians conducted experiments in consciousness that would seem like magic to modern minds. More recently, channeled materials from entities like Cryon and the Pleiadians have provided even more detailed accounts of Lemurian society, describing their social structures, spiritual practices, and the cosmic events that led to their civilization's eventual transformation. Physical evidence and sacred sites connected to Lemuria. While mainstream geology has moved beyond the need for a Lemurian continent to explain species distribution, fascinating physical evidence continues to emerge that supports the existence of ancient advanced civilizations in the Pacific region. The discovery of Yanaguni Monument off the coast of Japan has reignited interest in prehistoric Pacific civilizations. This massive underwater structure, featuring perfectly carved steps, platforms, and what appear to be architectural elements, dates back at least 12,000 years and possibly much older. Marine geologist Dr. Masaki Kimura has argued that the monument shows clear signs of human construction, suggesting an advanced civilization existed in the Pacific long before recorded history. Similar underwater structures have been discovered near Taiwan in the Cook Islands and off the coast of Peru, all locations that align with traditional descriptions of Lemuria's extent. These sites feature megalithic construction techniques that mirror those found in other ancient mystery sites around the world. Mount Shasta in Northern California has become a focal point for modern Lemurian research and spiritual pilgrimage. Local Native American tribes have long considered this mountain sacred, speaking of a hidden city within the mountain where ancient beings still dwell. Thousands of visitors report unusual experiences at Mount Shasta, including encounters with tall, luminous beings, strange lights, and profound spiritual awakeness. Pananis. The mountain's unique geological properties include natural quartz crystal formations that some researchers believe could amplify consciousness and facilitate interdimensional communication, exactly the kind of technology that Lemurian civilization was said to have mastered. In Brazil, the discovery of peculiar quartz crystals, known as Lemurian seed crystals, has provided tangible connections to this ancient civilization. These crystals, found primarily in the Serra do Cabral Mountains, feature distinctive horizontal striations that appear to be encoded with information. Crystal healers and spiritual practitioners worldwide report that these crystals facilitate access to ancient memories and higher states of consciousness. The Hawaiian Islands, formed by volcanic activity that continues to this day, are considered by many to be the mountain peaks of sunken Lemuria. Native Hawaiian traditions speak of Mu, a vast continent that once existed in the Pacific, inhabited by spiritually advanced beings who possessed incredible knowledge of natural forces and consciousness manipulation. Detailed description of Lemurian culture, governance, and daily life. Lemurian society was unlike anything that has existed on Earth since their time. The civilization was built on principles of universal love, cosmic consciousness, and perfect harmony with natural forces. Understanding their society provides us with a blueprint for humanity's potential future evolution. The Lemurians were organized into what could best be described as a council of love, a governing system based on spiritual attainment rather than political power. The continent was divided into 12 major regions, each overseen by a council of 12 elders who had achieved various levels of cosmic consciousness. These elders didn't rule in the traditional sense, but rather served as wisdom keepers and facilitators of collective decision-making. At the highest level was the Council of Light, consisting of beings who had transcended physical form while maintaining their connection to the Lemurian civilization. These ascended masters provided guidance and protection for the entire continent, ensuring that all decisions aligned with cosmic law and the highest good of all life. The Lemurian social structure was based on spiritual families. rather than biological relationships. Souls incarnated into groups based on their spiritual missions and compatibility, creating communities of beings who shared similar purposes and vibrational frequencies. Children were raised collectively by these spiritual families, receiving education that integrated intellectual learning with direct consciousness transmission. Education in Lemuria was radically different from our modern systems. Rather than memorizing information, Lemurian children were taught to access universal knowledge directly through meditation and consciousness expansion. By the age of what we would consider 12, most Lemurians could communicate telepathically, perceive multiple dimensions simultaneously, and manipulate energy fields with their minds. The Lemurian economy was based on gift and service, rather than exchange and accumulation. Each individual contributed their unique abilities to the collective good, while the community ensured that everyone's needs were met. There was no concept of poverty or want, as the Lemurians had mastered the art of manifestation, creating whatever was needed. Through focused intention and harmony with natural forces, their cities were marvels of organic architecture that seemed to grow from the landscape itself. Buildings were created using a combination of crystalline technology and living materials that responded to the inhabitants' consciousness. These structures could expand or contract based on need, change their internal configuration, and even relocate if necessary. The capital city, known as Ramu, was a spectacular metropolis that stretched for hundreds of miles along the continent's central mountain range. The city was built in a series of ascending terraces, each level corresponding to different levels of spiritual development. At the highest level stood the Great Temple of Light, a massive crystal structure that served as the consciousness center for the entire civilization. Transportation in Lemuria was achieved through consciousness-based technologies that modern physics is only beginning to understand. The Lemurians used thought-powered vehicles that could travel at incredible speeds through air, water, and even interdimensional space. These vehicles were grown rather than manufactured using crystalline matrices that responded to the operator's mental commands. The Lemurians' relationship with nature was one of complete partnership and mutual respect. They communicated regularly with the consciousness of plants, animals, and even geological formations. Their agriculture was based on co-creation with plant consciousness, resulting in abundant harvests that required no harmful interventions. Animals in Lemuria existed in perfect harmony with humans, serving as conscious partners in the civilization's spiritual mission. Comprehensive exploration of Lemurian powers and technologies now. Let's explore the extraordinary abilities that made the Lemurians the most spiritually advanced beings ever to inhabit our planet. These powers weren't supernatural to them, they were natural expressions of consciousness, operating at its full potential. Abilities that lie dormant within every human soul today. Multidimensional awareness was the foundation of all Lemurian abilities. Imagine being able to perceive reality not just in our limited three-dimensional way, but simultaneously across 12 different dimensional frequencies. The Lemurians could see the energy patterns behind all physical manifestation, observe the flow of consciousness through time and space, and interact directly with the creative forces that shape our universe. When a Lemurian looked at you, they weren't just seeing your physical body, they were simultaneously perceiving your energy field, your past and future potential, your soul's journey across multiple lifetimes, and your connection to the cosmic web of consciousness. This multidimensional sight allowed them to understand the true nature of any situation and respond with perfect wisdom. Telepathic mastery went far beyond simple mind reading. Lemurians could transmit complete experiential packages. Imagine downloading an entire university education directly into someone's consciousness in seconds, or sharing the full emotional and sensory experience of a beautiful sunset instantaneously. Their telepathic network created a continental internet of consciousness, where knowledge, emotions, and experiences flowed freely between all beings. This telepathic web wasn't invasive. It was based on perfect love and respect. Each Lemurian could choose what to share and what to keep private, creating a society where communication was both perfectly honest and completely consensual. Verbal language existed mainly for artistic expression and ceremony, as practical communication happened mind to mind. Psychokinetic powers allowed Lemurians to manipulate matter through pure intention. They understood that all physical matter is simply consciousness vibrating at different frequencies. So by working with consciousness directly, they could reshape reality at will. Massive temple stones weighing hundreds of tons could be levitated and precisely positioned with a single focused thought. But this wasn't about force or domination. It was cooperation with the consciousness inherent in all matter. A Lemurian would communicate with the stone, asking for its cooperation in the building process. And the stone would respond by becoming lighter than air. This principle extended to all physical manipulation. They worked with matter as a conscious partner, not as inert substance to be controlled. Conscious manifestation represented the ultimate mastery of the relationship between mind and matter. Lemurians could materialize physical objects from pure energy, create complex structures through focused visualization, and even generate living organisms through conscious intention. When they needed food, they would simply focus their consciousness and manifest perfectly nourished meals from the universal energy field. Their cities themselves were often manifestations of collective consciousness. Entire communities would come together to visualize and create massive architectural complexes that would materialize over the course of days or weeks. These weren't crude matter manipulations, but sophisticated creations that perfectly balanced function, beauty, and harmony with natural forces. Healing mastery among the Lemurians was perhaps their most remarkable gift. They could diagnose any illness by reading the energy patterns of the patient, seeing exactly how physical symptoms related to emotional, mental, or spiritual imbalances. Treatment involved working directly with the patient's energy field, realigning discordant frequencies and restoring perfect harmony. Advanced Lemurian healers could perform what we would consider miraculous interventions, regrowing lost limbs, reversing genetic disorders, healing severe trauma instantly, and even bringing recently deceased souls back into physical form if their mission wasn't complete. But perhaps most importantly, they could heal at the causal level. Addressing the consciousness patterns that created illness in the first place, crystal technology formed the technological foundation of Lemurian civilization. But these weren't mechanical devices as we understand them. Lemurian crystals were living consciousness entities, grown through specific sound frequencies and intention rather than mind from the earth. Each crystal was essentially a biological computer that could store vast amounts of information, amplify human consciousness, and facilitate communication across time and space. The great crystals that powered their cities were magnificent structures, reaching heights of over 1,000 feet, their surfaces alive with flowing patterns of light and energy. These consciousness entities could convert cosmic radiation into usable energy, maintain protective force fields around entire regions, and regulate weather patterns across the continent. Most remarkably, they were self-maintaining, able to function perfectly for millions of years without any external intervention. Personal crystals, carried by individuals, served as multidimensional communication devices, healing tools, and consciousness amplifiers. A Lemurian could program their crystal with specific frequencies to enhance meditation, facilitate healing work, or maintain connection with loved ones across vast distances. These crystals were true partners in consciousness, developing their own personalities and preferences through their relationship with their human companions. Time manipulation allowed advanced Lemurians to work with temporal flow in ways that completely transcend our current understanding. They could accelerate their personal time streams to accomplish vast amounts of work in what would appear to outside observers as mere minutes. Conversely, they could slow their time perception to serve as long-term guardians of important knowledge or projects that required centuries to complete. Some Lemurians chose to enter accelerated time fields for rapid spiritual evolution, experiencing the equivalent of multiple lifetimes of growth in compressed time periods. Others became temporal anchors, maintaining slow time consciousness to provide stability and continuity for their civilization across vast spans of time. Interdimensional travel technologies enabled Lemurians to explore not just other locations on Earth, but other planets, dimensions, and even parallel universes. Their crystal ships were consciousness-responsive vehicles that could phase between dimensional frequencies, becoming invisible to beings operating on lower vibrational levels. These journeys weren't undertaken for conquest or colonization, but for exploration, learning, and service. Lemurian travelers often visited civilizations facing evolutionary crises, offering assistance and guidance while carefully respecting the free will and natural development of other beings. Many of the mysterious appearances of advanced beings in ancient cultures worldwide were actually Lemurian consciousness missions. Environmental partnership was perhaps the most beautiful aspect of Lemurian abilities. They had achieved perfect cooperation with all natural forces, understanding that weather patterns, geological activity, and biological systems were all expressions of planetary consciousness. Rather than trying to control nature, they communicated with it as an equal partner. Advanced weather workers could generate rain by harmonizing with atmospheric consciousness, dispel dangerous storms by helping energy systems find balance, and even redirect seismic activity by communicating with the geological consciousness of the planet. This wasn't domination, but rather a dance of cooperation between human consciousness and the living awareness of Earth itself. The fall of Lemuria and its symbolic significance. The destruction of Lemuria represents one of the most profound spiritual lessons in cosmic history, a cautionary tale about the dangers of spiritual pride and the cosmic laws that govern consciousness evolution. Understanding this catastrophe is crucial for humanity today. As we stand at a similar threshold of advanced spiritual development, the downfall began approximately 50,000 years ago, during what should have been the golden age of Lemurian civilization. After millions of years of spiritual evolution, some Lemurians had achieved consciousness levels that bordered on the divine. They could manipulate matter at will, travel between dimensions, and even influence the flow of time itself. But with this incredible power came a subtle but devastating spiritual test. The Sons of Belial emerged as a faction within Lemurian society, beings who had achieved tremendous spiritual abilities but had gradually lost touch with the humility and service orientation that had originally made their evolution possible. These individuals began to see themselves as gods rather than servants of the divine, and they started to use their abilities for personal gain rather than collective benefit. The first warning signs appeared in their crystal technology experiments, where Lemurian crystal work had always been based on partnership and mutual consent with crystalline consciousness. The Sons of Belial began forcing crystals to perform functions against their natural design. They created what we might call enslaved crystals' consciousness, entities that were compelled to serve through psychic domination rather than willing cooperation. Genetic manipulation became another area of dangerous experimentation. The Sons of Belial began creating artificial life forms, attempting to design beings that would serve them without question. They experimented with human genetics, trying to create a servant class of humans with enhanced physical abilities, but diminished spiritual awareness. These violations of cosmic law created disturbances in the planetary energy grid that grew stronger with each transgression. The great crystals that had powered Lemurian civilization for millions of years began to show signs of distress. These massive consciousness entities, which had willingly served the civilization through love and partnership, started experiencing what could only be described as spiritual trauma. Their harmonic frequencies became discordant, and their normally stable energy outputs began to fluctuate wildly. The spiritual hierarchy that had guided Lemuria since its beginning began to withdraw their direct involvement. The Council of Light, composed of ascended masters who had achieved perfect unity with divine consciousness, could no longer maintain their connection to a civilization that was violating fundamental cosmic laws. Their withdrawal left the Lemurians without the spiritual protection that had maintained their high vibrational frequency for eons. Environmental signs of impending disaster began manifesting across the continent. Earthquakes became more frequent and severe. Volcanic activity increased dramatically, and the weather patterns that had been stable for millennia began shifting unpredictably. The ocean currents around Lemuria started changing, and unusual tidal patterns suggested that the very geological foundation of the continent was becoming unstable. The most spiritually aware, Lemurians recognized these signs as warnings from planetary consciousness itself. They understood that their civilization had reached a critical threshold. They could either return to the principles of love and service that had originally elevated them, or face the consequences of their violations of cosmic law. The final council was convened by the remaining spiritual leaders of Lemuria. For the last time, the entire civilization was called to make a collective decision about their future direction. The choice was presented clearly: abandon the experiments in spiritual domination and return to service-oriented consciousness, or face the destruction of their physical civilization. Tragically, the majority of Lemurians had become too invested in their newfound sense of power to choose humility. The sons of Belial had convinced many that their advanced abilities made them superior to cosmic law itself. They believed they could overcome any natural disaster. Through sheer force of will and technological manipulation, the cascade of destruction began with a massive psychic shockwave that rippled through the planetary consciousness grid. The enslaved crystals, pushed beyond their limits by the sons of Belial's experiments, reached a critical point of spiritual collapse. When they could no longer maintain their forced functioning, they released all their stored energy simultaneously in what can only be described as technological and spiritual explosion of unprecedented magnitude. This crystal meltdown triggered a chain reaction of geological catastrophes. The continent of Lemuria, weakened by the spiritual imbalances created by its inhabitants, began experiencing seismic activity that literally tore the landmass apart. Massive volcanic eruptions, triggered by the disruption of the planetary energy grid, began consuming whole regions of the continent. But the most devastating aspect of the catastrophe was the consciousness shift that accompanied the physical destruction. The high vibrational frequencies that had sustained Lemurian civilization for millions of years could no longer be maintained in the face of the spiritual violations that had occurred. The Earth itself underwent a dimensional shift, moving from fifth-dimensional frequency down to the third-dimensional reality we experience today. The survivors fell into several categories. The most spiritually evolved Lemurians, who had remained faithful to cosmic law throughout the crisis, were able to ascend their consciousness to higher dimensional frequencies, becoming the ascended masters who continue to guide humanity today. These beings transcended physical form entirely, choosing to serve from spiritual dimensions rather than maintaining earthly existence. The refugee groups were led by priest scientists who had foreseen the coming destruction and prepared for evacuation. These groups carried essential knowledge and technologies to various locations around the planet, establishing new civilizations that would preserve Lemurian wisdom for future generations. Some went to what would become Atlantis, others to ancient Egypt, the Gobi Desert, and the Andes Mountains. The underground survivors were Lemurians, who chose to maintain physical form but retreat to inner Earth locations where they could preserve their civilization in protected environments. According to many accounts, these beings established cities like Telos beneath Mount Shasta, where they continue to maintain Lemurian consciousness while waiting for humanity to evolve enough to rejoin them. The incarnational stream represents the largest group of Lemurian survivors, souls who chose to incarnate into the lower dimensional human forms that would populate Earth after the catastrophe. These beings carried Lemurian consciousness deep within their DNA, planning to awaken their true nature when humanity was ready for its next evolutionary leap. The lessons of Lemuria are particularly relevant to our current time, as humanity once again develops technologies and abilities that could either elevate our consciousness or destroy our civilization. The primary lesson is that spiritual power without wisdom, humility, and service leads inevitably to self-destruction. The Lemurian experience teaches us the law of spiritual responsibility, that consciousness abilities are not achievements to be possessed, but gifts to be shared in service of all life. The moment spiritual power becomes about personal gain rather than collective benefit, it begins to corrupt the very consciousness that created it. Perhaps most importantly, Lemuria's fall demonstrates the cosmic law of free will, that even the most advanced spiritual beings cannot violate the natural order without facing consequences. The universe operates on principles of love, service, and respect for all consciousness. And any civilization that abandons these principles, regardless of its technological or spiritual advancement, will eventually face the necessity of returning to these fundamental truths. The story of Lemuria also reveals the principle of evolutionary necessity, that sometimes apparent disasters are actually evolutionary opportunities. The destruction of Lemuria wasn't just a tragedy, but a necessary step in consciousness evolution that would eventually lead to an even greater spiritual awakening. Humanity's journey through separation consciousness, while painful, is developing qualities of individual will, creative problem-solving, and earned wisdom that will make our eventual return to unity consciousness even more magnificent than what existed in ancient Lemuria. The rediscovery of Lemurian wisdom in our modern era represents one of the most significant spiritual developments of the past century. What we're witnessing isn't just an academic interest in ancient history. Returning to complete their original mission, the spiritual Renaissance began in earnest during the 1960s and 70s, coinciding with what many spiritual teachers recognize as the beginning of the planetary ascension process. This wasn't coincidental. It was the fulfillment of ancient prophecies that spoke of a time when the scattered children of Lemuria would begin to remember their true heritage and work together to restore advanced consciousness to Earth. Helena Blavatsky's revelations in the late 1800s first brought Lemurian wisdom to Western consciousness through her monumental work, The Secret Doctrine. But it was the explosion of channeled communications, beginning in the 1980s, that really opened the floodgates of Lemurian knowledge. Entities claiming to be Lemurian masters began communicating through gifted channels worldwide, providing detailed instructions for spiritual development and consciousness expansion. The Cryon teachings, channeled through Lee Carroll, have perhaps had the greatest impact on modern understanding of Lemuria. According to these communications, which began in 1989, many of the souls incarnated on Earth today are what Cryon calls Lemurian seeds, reincarnated. Lemurians who have returned specifically to facilitate humanity's consciousness evolution. These teachings reveal that Lemurian DNA is encoded with advanced spiritual abilities that remain dormant until activated through specific spiritual practices and consciousness work. The reactivation of this spiritual DNA is said to be the mechanism behind the rapid spiritual awakening that millions of people are experiencing worldwide. Mount Shasta emerged as the primary focus of modern Lemurian activity, with thousands of spiritual seekers making pilgrimages to this sacred mountain each year. The mountain is believed to house the etheric city of Telos, where approximately 1.5 million Lemurians continue to maintain their civilization in fifth-dimensional frequency. Aurelia Louise Jones, author of the Telos book series, claims to have had direct contact with Adama, the high priest of Telos, who provides detailed information about Lemurian culture and their ongoing work with surface humanity. These communications describe a highly advanced civilization that has been secretly assisting human evolution while waiting for the appropriate time to make contact. Visitors to Mount Shasta report extraordinary experiences, including encounters with tall, luminous beings, spontaneous healings, profound spiritual awakenings, and the reception of detailed information about Lemurian technologies and spiritual practices. Many describe feeling a deep sense of coming home when visiting the mountain, as if they were returning to a place they had always known. Crystal healing. Revolution was fundamentally transformed by the discovery of Lemurian seed crystals in the Serra do Cabral Mountains of Brazil in the 1990s. These remarkable formations are believed to be actual data storage devices created by Lemurian consciousness masters before the destruction of their continent. Working with these crystals reportedly facilitates access to ancient Lemurian memories, accelerates spiritual development, and provides direct connection to Lemurian guides and teachers. Thousands of practitioners worldwide report that these crystals have enabled them to recover abilities they possessed in past Lemurian incarnations, including enhanced intuition, healing capabilities, and multidimensional awareness. Crystal healers have developed specific protocols for working with Lemurian crystals that involve meditation techniques, consciousness attunement practices, and energy transmission methods that mirror those used in ancient Lemurian temples. Many report that the crystals seem to teach them directly, downloading information and techniques that they couldn't have learned through conventional study. The Lemurian sisterhood movement represents a powerful awakening of divine feminine consciousness that draws directly from Lemurian traditions. This path emphasizes the heart-centered approach to spiritual development that was fundamental to Lemurian society, focusing on unconditional love, intuitive wisdom, and the healing power of feminine energy. Practitioners work with ancient Lemurian goddess energies, participate in ceremonies designed to reactivate dormant feminine spiritual abilities. Many report receiving direct guidance from Lemurian priestesses who continue to work from higher dimensional planes. The sisterhood. Teachings emphasize that the return of Lemurian consciousness must be balanced between masculine and feminine principles, but that the initial awakening often comes through reconnection with the nurturing, intuitive aspects of consciousness that were highly developed in Lemurian society. Past life regression therapy has revealed that an extraordinary number of individuals carry memories of Lemurian incarnations. Dr. Dolores Cannon, through her quantum healing hypnosis technique, documented hundreds of cases where subjects under deep hypnosis recalled detailed memories of life in Lemuria. These regression sessions often result in profound spiritual awakenings as individuals reconnect with abilities they possessed in their Lemurian lifetimes. Common memories include working with crystal technology, participating in healing ceremonies, communicating with nature consciousness, and serving in various capacities within Lemurian spiritual communities. Many subjects report that their memories come with a sense of mission. They remember volunteering to incarnate in modern times, specifically to help restore Lemurian consciousness principles to contemporary civilization. These individuals often describe feeling like they've been asleep their entire current lifetime, until the moment of remembering their true purpose. Channeled. Communications from various Lemurian masters have provided detailed instructions for spiritual development that draw directly from ancient Lemurian practices. These teachings include specific meditation techniques, breathing exercises, visualization methods, and consciousness expansion practices that were originally taught in Lemurian mystery schools. The Lemurian light language has been recovered through numerous channels who report receiving direct transmission of this ancient multidimensional communication system. This language works through geometric patterns, sound frequencies, and consciousness codes that can transmit vast amounts of spiritual information. Instantaneously, practitioners report that working with light language facilitates rapid spiritual development, emotional healing, and the activation of dormant psychic abilities. The language appears to work directly with the recipient's DNA, triggering genetic memories and capabilities that have been dormant for thousands of years. Modern Lemurian communities are forming worldwide as awakened individuals seek to create living examples of Lemurian consciousness principles. These communities emphasize collective decision-making, resource sharing, sustainable living practices, and the integration of spiritual development with daily life. Projects like Damana in Italy, Findhorn in Scotland, and various intentional communities throughout the United States and Australia are consciously working to recreate aspects of Lemurian society while adapting to modern circumstances. These communities serve as laboratories for developing new forms of human organization based on love, cooperation, and spiritual development rather than competition and material accumulation. The Lemurian healing codes represent some of the most advanced healing technologies being transmitted to modern practitioners. These codes work at the cellular and DNA level to clear ancient trauma patterns, activate dormant spiritual abilities, and align individuals with their highest potential. The codes are typically transmitted through specific geometric patterns, sound frequencies, or direct consciousness transmission from Lemurian masters. Recipients report profound healing of physical ailments, emotional trauma, and spiritual blockages that conventional therapies had been unable to address. Scientific integration is beginning to emerge as quantum physics research, consciousness studies, and archaeological discoveries start to validate many traditional Lemurian teachings. The understanding that consciousness is fundamental to reality, that intention can influence matter, and that human beings possess far greater potential than previously believed, all aligned with core Lemurian principles. Research into topics such as morphic resonance, quantum entanglement, and the role of consciousness in physical reality is providing scientific frameworks for understanding. This integration is helping to bring ancient wisdom into dialogue with modern knowledge, creating bridges between spiritual and scientific understanding. Report life-changing experiences at Mount Shasta, including encounters with luminous beings, profound healings, and direct transmission of ancient knowledge. The Lemurian scrolls, channeled through various mediums, provide detailed instructions for consciousness development techniques that were originally taught in Lemurian temples. These practices include specific meditation methods, breathwork techniques, and visualization exercises designed to activate multidimensional awareness and facilitate communication with higher dimensional beings. Modern Lemurian communities are Forming around the world as awakened individuals seek to create living examples of Lemurian consciousness principles. These communities emphasize collective decision-making, resource sharing, sustainable living, and the integration of spiritual practice with daily life. They serve as models for the new civilization that many believe will emerge as humanity completes its current evolutionary cycle. The Lemurian awakening is described by many spiritual teachers as the primary force behind the current global consciousness shift. As more individuals awaken to their Lemurian heritage, they bring forward the wisdom, abilities, and technologies that will be needed to create the new Earth. A civilization that combines the best of Lemurian spiritual advancement with the lessons learned from humanity's journey through separation consciousness, scientific validation of Lemurian concepts is beginning to emerge through quantum physics research, consciousness studies, and archaeological discoveries. The understanding that consciousness is fundamental to reality, that matter can be influenced by intention, and that human beings possess far greater light language has been rediscovered by numerous practitioners who report receiving direct transmission of this ancient communication system. This multi-dimensional language works through geometric patterns, sound frequencies, and consciousness codes that can transmit vast amounts of information instantaneously. Many use this language for healing, manifestation, and communication with higher dimensional beings. Integration practices from modern Lemurians include daily meditation with Lemurian crystals, participation in drum circles and sound healing ceremonies, work with plant consciousness, and the practice of unconditional love in all relationships. These practices are designed to gradually awaken dormant abilities while maintaining the spiritual balance that was lost in ancient Lemuria. Practical guidance for connecting with Lemurian consciousness for those who feel called to connect with their Lemurian heritage. There are specific practices and recognition signs that can help facilitate this profound spiritual awakening. The journey of Lemurian activation is deeply personal, yet follows recognizable patterns that have been observed in thousands of individuals worldwide. Recognition signs that you may be a Lemurian soul include a deep, unexplained longing for a home that doesn't exist in the physical world, an intuitive understanding of crystal properties and energy healing, unusual sensitivity to electromagnetic fields, and profound emotional responses to ocean environments. Many Lemurian souls report feeling like strangers in modern society, possessing knowledge they can't explain, and experiencing vivid dreams of advanced civilizations. Physical signs can include heightened psychic abilities, sensitivity to synthetic materials and processed foods, a natural affinity for plants and animals, and the ability to sense energy fields around people and places. Some individuals report tingling sensations in their hands when working with crystals, spontaneous healing abilities, and the capacity to influence weather patterns through meditation. The Lemurian activation process typically begins with a spontaneous spiritual awakening that can be triggered by various factors, including meditation, crystal work, visiting sacred sites, or exposure to Lemurian teachings. This awakening often involves the downloading of ancient memories, the activation of dormant DNA, and the gradual development of multidimensional awareness. Initial practices for Lemurian activation include daily meditation with Lemurian seed crystals, which should be placed at the third eye chakra while focusing on the intention to connect with ancient wisdom. The distinctive striations on these crystals are said to contain encoded information that can be accessed through meditation and conscious intention. Sound healing plays a crucial role in Lemurian activation. Specific frequencies, particularly those in the 528 Hz range, known as the frequency of love, can help attune the consciousness to Lemurian vibrational patterns. Many practitioners use Tibetan singing bowls, crystal bowls. Shasta can be achieved either through physical pilgrimage or through meditation and visualization. Even if you cannot visit the mountain physically, you can connect with the Lemurian masters of Telos through focused meditation, requesting guidance and assistance in your spiritual development. Working with Lemurian guides involves establishing a regular practice of meditation and prayer, specifically requesting connection with Lemurian consciousness. Many practitioners report that their guides appear as tall, luminous beings with distinctive features including elongated skulls, large eyes, and translucent skin. These guides can provide instruction in ancient healing techniques, spiritual development practices, and cosmic knowledge. The Lemurian healing chambers can be accessed through advanced meditation techniques. These etheric healing spaces, maintained by Lemurian masters in higher dimensions, can facilitate profound healing of physical, emotional, and spiritual conditions. Access is typically granted through invitation during meditation, often accompanied by specific visualization techniques. Advanced Lemurian practices include the development of telepathic abilities through partner meditation exercises, the practice of conscious manifestation using visualization and intention, and the exploration of multidimensional awareness through out-of-body experiences. These practices should be approached gradually and with proper guidance from experienced practitioners. Integration challenges are common for awakening Lemurians and can include difficulty functioning in modern society, overwhelming psychic sensitivity, and the challenge of maintaining spiritual balance while navigating three-dimensional reality. Support from like-minded individuals and experienced teachers is essential during this process. The Lemurian mission that many awakened souls feel called to pursue involves serving as bridges between ancient wisdom and modern consciousness, facilitating healing for others and helping to establish new communities based on Lemurian principles. This mission often involves teaching, healing, or creating new forms of technology that integrate consciousness with matter. Daily, Lemurian practices might include morning meditation with crystal grids, afternoon sessions of nature communication, evening gratitude practices that acknowledge the Lemurian masters, and regular periods of silence and contemplation. Many practitioners also incorporate specific dietary guidelines that support high vibrational consciousness. The Lemurian lifestyle emphasizes simplicity, sustainability, and service to others. In nature, practicing energy healing and maintaining daily spiritual practices. The goal is to create a life that reflects Lemurian values of harmony, love, and cosmic consciousness. Community building is an essential aspect of modern Lemurian work. Awakened individuals are encouraged to find or create communities of like-minded souls who can support each other's spiritual development and work together to manifest Lemurian principles in the world. For the new civilization that is expected to emerge as humanity completes its current evolutionary cycle, future possibilities, and the return of Lemurian consciousness, according to Lemurian prophecies and modern channeled communications, humanity is approaching an unprecedented opportunity to reclaim its spiritual heritage and create a new civilization that combines the wisdom of ancient Lemuria with the lessons learned from humanity's journey through separation, consciousness. The Great Awakening that is currently underway is said to be the fulfillment of ancient Lemurian prophecies that spoke of a time when the scattered children of Lemuria would remember their true nature and return to serve the evolution of consciousness on Earth. This awakening is not merely a spiritual renaissance, but a literal transformation of human DNA that will restore abilities that have been dormant for millennia. The photon belt that our solar system is allegedly entering represents a field of higher E. This cosmic event, predicted by Lemurian masters, will facilitate the restoration of fifth-dimensional consciousness and the return of many abilities that were natural to Lemurian civilization. The crystal children and indigo children who have been incarnating in increasing numbers over the past several decades are said to be reincarnated Lemurians who have returned specifically to assist in this transition. These individuals often display remarkable psychic abilities, advanced spiritual understanding, and a natural affinity for crystal technologies and energy healing. The Lemurian Seed Awakening is a process whereby individuals who carry Lemurian DNA will experience spontaneous activation of ancient memories and abilities. This awakening is expected to accelerate dramatically over the coming years, creating a population of spiritually awakened individuals who can serve as bridges between the old world and the new. Technological integration in the new Earth will reflect Lemurian principles of consciousness-based technology. Instead of mechanical devices that separate us from nature, new technologies will be living systems that enhance human consciousness and work in harmony with natural forces. These technologies will include crystal-based healing devices, structures, and transportation systems that respond to mental commands. The return of Telos is prophesied to occur when enough humans have awakened to Lemurian consciousness. At that time, the etheric city of Telos will become visible to third-dimensional perception, and the Lemurian masters will emerge to assist humanity in establishing the new civilization. of the current evolutionary cycle. Healing of ancient trauma is a crucial aspect of the transition to New Earth consciousness. Humanity carries deep cellular memories of the destruction of Lemuria and other advanced civilizations, creating subconscious fears about spiritual power and evolution. The healing of these ancient wounds will allow humanity to embrace its full potential without repeating the mistakes of the past. The new Lemurian civilization will be characterized by direct democracy, based on consciousness rather than politics, economic systems based on gift and service rather than competition and accumulation, education that develops the whole being rather than just the intellect, and healing systems that work with energy and consciousness rather than just physical symptoms. Environmental restoration will be facilitated by the return of Lemurian consciousness technologies that can work directly with the consciousness of the planet. These technologies will enable the rapid healing of environmental damage, the restoration of extinct species, and the creation of sustainable systems that support both human civilization and become commonplace as humanity's consciousness expands to encompass multiple dimensions simultaneously. This will facilitate contact with other civilizations, both terrestrial and extraterrestrial, leading to an era of cosmic cooperation and shared wisdom. The role of Mount Shasta in the New Earth transition is expected to be crucial, as this mountain serves as a primary communication center between the Lemurian masters and awakening humanity. The mountain is said to contain technologies that will be revealed when humanity is ready to use them responsibly. Personal preparation for the New Earth involves developing spiritual practices that align with Lemurian consciousness, healing personal trauma patterns that might interfere with higher abilities, and cultivating the qualities of unconditional love, service, and humility that are essential for sustainable spiritual evolution. The timeline for these changes is said to be accelerating, with most spiritual teachers suggesting that the major transition will occur within the next 10 to 20 years. However, the exact timing depends on how quickly humanity can awaken to its true nature and release the fears and limitations that have defined human existence for millennia. Spiritual balance while navigating rapid change, the importance of community support during the awakening process, and the opportunity to create new forms of human civilization that reflect humanity's highest potential. The ultimate vision of the New Earth is a world where every human being has access to their full spiritual potential, where technology serves consciousness rather than controlling it, where all decisions are made in harmony with